And as usual, we can begin with our prayer. By now, you know it well. It's the same prayer every time we meet because it's a prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Votu Sahanao Bunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil or fight with each other. Peace, peace, peace beyond all. So as usual, I'll mute my microphone and see if we have any good questions. Even bad questions will do.
Hi, Swamiji. I do have a question. Well, I actually have two. They are about the scriptures. The first one is if you could tell us a little bit more about the Gunas, because I've been researching and some people also link them to like Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and so on. So it got a little confusing for me. And there's something else about the Gunas that I wanted to ask, which is there's the passage from the Bhagavad Gita, which is basically directing it to a source or God or whatever you want to call it. And it says above the three worlds. So I was wondering if he's actually calling the three Gunas the three worlds.
So you see, in order to understand this, I can begin with some numerology. It seems that the number 3 is significant. And mathematically, of course, we know that 3 times 3 times 3 is 9, and every multiple of 9, the digits added up together, make 9. 2 9s are 18, 8 plus 1 is 9. So why is that? It's because in 3 multiples of 3, we have described the whole of existence. And it's important that we don't confuse the different sets of 3s. Now, according to the Sankhya philosophy, and the whole of Vedanta adopts the same position. I should point out that there are 6 philosophies in the Vedic system. That is, a system that acknowledges the authority, at least partly or fully, of the Vedas. Again, the Vedas themselves are divided conveniently into 2 sections. The one section really is to do with rituals and this world. It's to find a better world in which we live and acknowledges the existence of a relative world and how to deal with it. You can say, in a way, it is to do from the emotional side with praise and wonder. Praising and wondering and expressing wonder at all the elements in front of us. But it is also to do with cosmology and physics. There's a very good book called Vedic Physics on this. Because if you don't take it in this way, many passages within the Vedas don't make any sense. For example, Ashwamedha refers to horse sacrifice. Oh, they used to sacrifice horses in those days. No, because it is described as something in the sky. And its head is in one corner, its tail is another, and so on. So it's clearly not a horse that is here, that you ride, that you can put on a fire and sacrifice. Not that kind of thing. So there's a great deal of symbolic language attached to these Vedas. But what I've described is what is called the karma kanda. Karma, you know, action. Sounds like a movie. Action, there we are. Karma kanda. That is that portion to do with causal relationships, actions, reactions. In other words, normal everyday life of time and space and function and causation. But then the other section is what we call Vedanta, and this is the Upanishads. Some may say this is derived from upa, ni, sitting near. The image is sitting near a teacher. Many people even go further, sitting at the feet of a teacher, gaining knowledge. And it is this section of the Upanishads to do with Jnana Kanda, to do with the knowledge portion, that we're interested in terms of philosophical questions. Philosophical questions, not mere speculation, but in this sense, philosophical questions means raising up the natural curiosity of man, asking meaningful questions, and then delving deeply into the answers through insight, as well as through logic, as well as through valid testimony, as well as through inference. In other words, using the normal means of knowledge, but this curious thing called insight. Insight, a kind of intuition, a kind of spiritual intuition, a deep intuition. And it is accessed by concentration. So Sankhya and Yoga, these are twin philosophies. They go together. These Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, these two go together. And we have Uttari Mimamsa too. And we have Nyaya, which is to do with logic. But you see, the Uttari Mimamsa is called the Vedanta. And even within this, we have a variety of approaches. Our highest conclusion is that of non-dualism. But even so, the Bhagavad Gita is concerned with many, many different approaches, ranging from dualism to non-dualism. Even so, in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it refers to certain Sankhya principles because they know how to express the world. They may disagree with the conclusions of the Sankhya's, but they all agree that this relative world has three ingredients, three evolutionary forces. And these are very often misleadingly described as qualities. But you can't say they're qualities. Qualities means nothing. Qualities, I often say, you see, if you say, okay, give me a cup of whiteness, what does it mean? You have to say, Swami, you have to be more specific. Is it white paint? Is it white milk? What kind of thing is it? And so the guna is a substance, as it were, and a quality, the two together. And it applies throughout the whole universe because, according to the Sankhya's, everything is made from these three components. Now, these three components are called guna. Guna means literally a rope that binds us. And we can think of it in many different ways. Something, if you have a parcel and you give somebody a parcel and you tie it up with a string, it's a useful thing. It defines the parcel and stops it from spreading all over the place. So the gunas are useful in terms of defining the universe. And they come, as I say, with certain forms, certain things, and things which have certain qualities. And very often we describe them more by the qualities because it's easier. So this is called, these three evolutionary forces are gunas. They not only define things, but they also, by virtue of defining things, delude us because they bind us in terms of understanding or misunderstanding this world. And they keep us grounded to this earth, if you will, by giving us the components of a kind of illusion. And rather than say illusion, because that word can be misleading, we can rather say apparition. Something like a magic show. A magician brings some equipment on a stage. A lady enters into the equipment. The lady is sawn in half. You rub your eyes. You want to know, how did it happen? Somebody makes something appear. Somebody makes them disappear. There's one traveling show internationally called Illusionists. And that's exactly what they're doing. But you rub your eyes, and if you didn't know any better, you'd think all of these people have some supernatural powers. But it's all just sleight of hand or deception, misleading with your one hand while you do something with the other, redirecting your attention in one way while something else is being done in another. And so whatever phase of life we can think of, whether it's organic life, whether it is mineral life, these three operate. So we should give you some examples to illustrate the simplicity of the world. Only three components are there. So let us take modern physics. Modern physics will have three forces available. We can say four, but I suspect the fourth is connected with the others. And one is called gravitation, gravitational force, gravitational energy. And if you see what it wants to do, is the principle of falling. You can say, in this sense, in the beginning was hydrogen and helium plus the principle of falling. It wants to hold everything, bind everything together. See the words, see the language, binding. It wants to bind everything into a unity. There is an element that wants to bind everything into a unity, and we call this element sattva. It's related to the term sat, something that infers purity, something that infers truthfulness. And then the other component will be an opposing force. It wants things to fly off. Electrical energy wants to do this. And when we balance the two, we have a well-balanced tug of war going on, which sustains the universe and keeps it in some kind of balance. This balance we call dharma. And so this electrical energy wants things to fly off, wants to scatter everything, and this is called rajas. And then we find things don't want to move. We call this force inertia. And we can easily see it if you drive a car. A car sits in your garage and does not want to go. It's as if it folds its arms and says, not going anywhere. You have to get inside it, start the engine, and you have to apply a certain acceleration. And when you drive the car, you can see gears are necessary. And we can use these gears also as an illustration, as an example of what should we do with these three forces. So the car doesn't want to go, you have to force it to go. That is, you have to apply some energetic impulse. This is called rajas. Unfortunately, it doesn't want to stop. So we have to apply another force. That's called inertia. We have to put brakes on and bring it to its original steady condition of not wanting to move. But you see, when a car is well controlled, there is a directional element to it. We can call this sattva. Same thing in the mental field. In the mental field, you wake up one morning, you feel a little lethargic physically and mentally as well. Chances are, if you feel lethargic physically, you'll also feel a little mentally lazy also. And you want the maximum amount of sleep, which is, I'm appealing to people here, maximum amount of sleep, which is?
5 minutes more.
Thank you, 5 minutes more. You wake up, 5 minutes more, please. Okay, all right. There's a standard joke here. All right. So you see, the mind is in a state of inertia and the body doesn't want to move either. A lack of enthusiasm. And then some days you get up with a bounce and you say, oh, thank goodness it's morning, as opposed to, oh, thank God it's morning. These are two types of people. And off you go, greatly enthusiastic because you may have a goal in mind. There is some kind of motivational factor that wants to make you move. And then you see, you get an equilibrium of mind where a certain element of contentment is there. You don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to stand still, nor do you want to move necessarily, but you want a certain sense of peacefulness. Something like when you look over a beautiful scene. Like if you watch a beautiful scene in the sky, or a sunrise or a sunset, or if you're in a forest, or watching a stream, or in the mountains. You don't want to catch anything and put it in your pocket and take it home. You don't want to criticize anything. Oh, this sunrise, what a pity. God should have put a little bit more purple here, maybe a little orange there. No, you accept it and you feel extremely peaceful. There's this state of mind. And at any moment, we can watch and we can evaluate what state of mind are things in now. This becomes very useful to us. Now, we say that there are three principles in Vedanta. There is only a unity of existence. If that is true, then all the forms and shapes that we see, all the colors and sounds, all the phenomena that we experience in the objective universe is somehow unreal. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyoti gamaya, mrityo amritam gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality. And these three phrases go together synonymously. How so? You see, if we evaluate something as real or unreal, the chances are we are watching something appear and disappear or something change. Supposing there's an elephant in the room and it suddenly appears. You'll rub your eyes. You'll say, I'm not sure if I saw it correctly. And supposing the elephant is there and changes into a mouse, you'll rub your eyes again. You'll have a second take. But the world is not as obvious as that, and constantly we see change because we take time for granted. And as long as we take time for granted and assert that it is somehow permanent, then we ignore the fact that change means there is nothing fixed. And then when we take the other aspect of it, when we take the aspect of objective space, we can see that within space there is change as well. We can also see things appear and disappear. For example, this last second, when I said appear, has gone. The very second appeared and disappeared. And time is an illusion from the point of view that our interpretation of things happening now is really in the past, because it takes time for the photons to travel. Light has a time factor, and the light that comes from the sun arrives only 8.5 minutes late. So we're always looking at things in the past, but persuaded that everything is happening now, that everything is permanent, and everything is fixed, and everything is determined, and we live in this world. But our modern science, as more and more we investigate, validates what the ancient people were saying. No, my dear fellow, it's just an appearance. It's an apparitional world that we're living in. And for an apparition to appear, three things are necessary. These are the three characteristics of the Gunas that bind us to this illusion. So the old example, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it, if not at least tired of it, is in the twilight of the day, you go out into the garden, you see something coiled up, and immediately the mind starts panicking. When the mind starts panicking, the body starts panicking, sweating takes place, and the impulse to run takes place, because you have just thought, a thing is in my garden, it's coiled up, it's a snake. But when you examine it closely, in other words, take the lamp, you can say the lamp of wisdom, and examine it closely, it's just a rope. Now, guna means rope. Guna means something that binds. So we can see that these strands, we can see a connectedness in the language and the concepts. But what was necessary for us to make the mistake? The rope was hidden from us. A snake was projected. The whole world is a projection of something. And what we see is a reality. Once the illusion is gone, in other words, once the lamp of knowledge or wisdom shines upon the subject, we get the revelation. Now the mind is the lamp. It is the mind that has the capacity to hide or project or reveal. And so we have to use the mind. And that aspect of the mind that we use is called sattva. And that sattva is the revealing factor. But it is also, you see, a rubber. And the snake in the example that we see is a signature of what is the reality. Because we didn't mistake the bus for a snake. We didn't mistake a wheelbarrow for a snake. There was something similar. In this world, we find these three gunas and all their manifestations in all their variety are signatures of something which never moves, something which is utterly permanent, something which has no space, doesn't occupy any space. It is something that is, in other words, fixed, something that is undying, something that is unchanging, something that is undivided, and something that is infinite. And that is why we see what we see and how we see it. It's not a mystery. So this world is a kind of appearance, but three components are there, akin to three robbers. So the story is like that. Three robbers come and they attack a traveler. And one robber is dark-minded and wants to rob the person and kill the victim. Rob the person of what? Rob the person of wisdom, in the example. Rob the person of their freedom. But Rajas comes along, a second robber, and he says, no, wait, let us just tie him up, and then we'll leave him. So that's a little bit of a better option, but still binds you, it still restricts your freedom. And the other robber says, okay, comes back, unties the victim, takes him to his house, feeds him, and then says, I have to go before the police catch me, and off he goes. So this is equally binding, and somebody who transcends these three gunas is called Trigunatita, someone who transcends these three evolutionary forces. Our goal is to transcend these evolutionary forces by using them. Now it's like that car example I gave. Imagine instead of 6 gears, we have a car with 3 gears. Tamas, Rajas, Sattva. And we conduct our car through this life by learning to shift the gears. You will easily know if you drive a car that the car is a little bit difficult. You realize, oh, it's the wrong gear. You shift it up to the next gear. So you shift wherever you see tamas, inertia, laziness, a kind of dullness, then you shift it up to the next level, activity. Now, some years ago, people came to me and said, I want to set goals. And people who know me know I don't like goals, because goals are in the future and give you anxiety. This is completely contrary to all the business advice that you get. We should have goals, we should have objectives, we should have drive. Well, you can have it if you like, it'll give you anxiety. You need to shift the gear one more stage. So I agree, you can go from tamas to rajas, and rajas is better than tamas. Setting goals is much better than laziness. But shift the gear one notch higher and you have sattva. And the characteristic of sattva is that it releases you from a bondage of egoism. Any thought, any activity, any deed that is selfless, that has no sense of embodiment in mind. Anything that is full of generosity and the higher noble values of strength and beauty and goodness and love and harmony. Anything that is not restricted. Anything that is generous in its outpouring. This is sattva. And sattva has a characteristic of illuminating. It illumines. It has the characteristic of purifying the mind. And it is only the mind that is binding you. And it is only the mind that is releasing you and illuminating what is within, what transcends this. And so once the mind is pure, through cultivating the sattva, by the game of shifting gears, tamas, rajas, sattva, assess the mind. Now, in order to assess the mind, you have to be a non-guna material. You have to be a non-guru being, a guna being. You have to be an observer who says, I see the mind looks like this. Okay, let me shift its attention up. And as soon as I shift its attention up, I still notice a characteristic which is egocentrically based. I give the example always, and this will be a repetition, and I'm not afraid of repetition. Supposing I go and see a sports match. Since I'm keen on rugby, let's say it's a rugby match. Supposing I'm a 5'2", and all these other people are ex-rugby players, and there's all 6'5". And I can't see, so I want to get into the front row. So what I do, I decide, okay, let me quickly nudge my way through, left, right, and center, poke people in the ribs, attack people, the back of people's legs, and before they know what was happening, I'm sitting there in the front with a wonderful view. But you see, the problem is, very soon, there'll be a commotion in the crowd. And those 6'5" people will all turn to each other and say, "Who did that?" And they'll become aggressive. And everybody will point to this little fellow, 5 foot, and they'll all pounce on me. This is called rajas. So the net effect of selfishness is based on a holistic concept. There are no two. Don't ever think that there are two. There is only one energy, there is only one matter, there is only one spirit. Supposing in the African bush, in the savannah, in the early morning, two creatures are available. One is what's called an impala. It's a form of a deer. And so the impala is standing there in the early morning, completely dazed, half asleep. Be sure that there's a lion that is fully awake. And to the deer, life is just awakening, but to the lion, there is food in front. And you know the story next, because the lion will actively pounce on the deer. So if you're in a state of tamas, beware, because you'll be attacked. It's a bit like if you're in the way of a car and you are too lazy to move, you'll be run down, I'm pretty sure, and you'll be pretty bruised. So we have to elevate the mind. Sattva is a different condition. And sattva takes you out of this difficulty because there is no egoistic position in sattva. It's all a spirit of generosity, a spirit of love, unconditional love, spread everywhere, equally present everywhere. Love which is expansive, love which is enduring. Human love is not expansive, it's expensive. There's a difference. So these are the three gunas, and you'll find them everywhere. Supposing we come across a rock. Well, a rock has a predominance of tamas. Supposing we find life at its most organic, at its best, let's say a lion, then rajas is dominating. And then we come across a saint or a sage or a mystic, and sattva is dominating. And so we have to shift our gear constantly and play a game like that. And as I say very often, a minimum requirement for freedom and revelation would be 51% sattva, 49% others, minimum. We should try and make it more, of course. We should learn to continuously saturate the mind with these noble values, a spirit of generosity, so that our nature, awakened nature, will always be spontaneously working for the welfare of all beings. The highest state is working for the welfare of all beings. It is not samadhi. We know this. And we only have to go to the Bhagavad Gita to get that lesson. Somebody of steady wisdom, sthita prajna, will be working for the welfare of all beings. It is a mistake to think that enlightened people, say in India, were lazy and lived in caves and were only interested in their own salvation, because we know from this very passage, this description of somebody of steady wisdom, that he's working for the welfare of all beings, inevitably, because the dictum always is seeing the self in all beings and all beings in the self. So these are the gunas. I'll attend to your hand shortly, but the question was extended. What about the three worlds? So 3 gunas is one set of 3. I mentioned 9. What is the other set of 3 that describes the whole of existence? Since all physical world is made up of 3 gunas, and when we say physical world, we're including mental world. Well, the next thing is, we only have 3 worlds. We have a waking state, we have a dream, and a dreamless sleep. When you go to sleep tonight, you will fall asleep in phases. You'll start drifting off, and then you'll go into an initial dream. A play of events taken, no doubt, from all your wishes and concerns of the day, and replayed in an artistic, creative way that seems not to make any sense. And then that deepens, it goes down, and you can measure brain waves and the corresponding brain waves in connection with this. And you go into a state where there is no events, there are no scenes, there's no causality, no time, no space. It seems like a blank, and yet we get a feeling of peace. Why do we get a feeling of peace? Because we're experiencing a unity. There's nobody to fight with, there's nobody to fear. There's nothing else there. And yet some entity, some observing being is watching these 3 states. And that leads us to a conclusion that there's a Turiya, there's a 4th watching these 3 states. So the rotation of these 3 states is our entire experience of consciousness. Consciousness is only exhibiting itself in the waking state, in the dream state, and the dreamless sleep state. And we have the capacity to watch it, to observe it, to see the comings and goings. And we know that these are apparitional phenomena. Why? Because they come and go. Don't forget, what is the definition of reality? Is related to permanence, related to sudden appearance, disappearance, and change. And all of these 3 appear and disappear and change. And then the 3rd set of 3 will be, there's a function of creativity and dissolution and sustentation. We give God 3 characteristics: the creator, the preserver, and the dissolver. And it's because these are a reflection of this ultimate being that is a unity, that is existence itself, that it is consciousness and is bliss. And so these 3 characteristics are reflections of the ultimate description of the absolute. With an apology, we can't really describe it, but we know it's existent as opposed to non-existent. You can't get existence from non-existence. And we know it is supreme consciousness. It is the author of all intelligence. There is a trend, a materialistic trend, a reductionist trend that says that life is just dull, it's full of tamas in our yogic language, and it is no intelligence. Well, of course it has intelligence. Even a rock, when you suspend it from a thread, knows where the center of the earth is. Every part of life, every atom has this knowledge. Every electron knows, I don't want to deposit myself into the depths of a proton. I want to fly off. I want to buzz in such a way I never get caught. Even though my charge is negative, I will not fall into the natural attractive force of a positive. I'll maintain my elusiveness, and I will be a thing, or not a thing. I'll be a non-thing. I'll be a buzzing thing. I'll be something that you cannot catch. You cannot pin me down. You cannot see where I am and try to know how fast I'm moving. And you cannot know how fast I'm moving and at the same time know where I am. This is what we call the realm of quantum mechanics. And so with this set of 3, we now have 9. And so don't confuse the 3 worlds with the 3 gunas is the short answer to your question. Okay, so I see there was a hand up.
Yeah, Swamiji. Sorry, thank you for that explanation. I would love to find in the world that we live in with the people that I communicate with another word or another language that isn't goals, or that isn't. I think people, everybody wants to feel that they have a sense of purpose. Everybody, whatever their spiritual belief, we all believe we have a sense of purpose. We have a unique fingerprint, and when we're gone, that's also gone. So we must have some purpose. And you're right. Most of society either have a to-do list, a diary, or goals, because that's what the world that we live in, ultimately how it measures achievement or success. I would love to find a language to communicate with people that takes away the anxiety around a to-do list or goals or activity per se, because the problem with I believe the problem with communicating that goals ultimately result in anxiety because they're future focused, well, then everybody goes, well, I'll just sit in my backside and I'll do nothing. And we're going, no, you have to do something. And they go, yeah, but if I have to do something, I need to write it down. I need to know what it is. I need some guidance. And not everybody has a guru to guide them to understand that, ultimately the divine, the universe will provide. And if you're open to that, that's fine. So that I've just got a challenge around, I would love to find my guru's language that doesn't evolve around goals or activity or to-do lists.
Well, my advice is something like this, and it's based on, we have enough problem of our own without attending to other people's problems and progress. Most people want to set goals because most people have desires, and it's not really to do with purpose. It's really to do with the purpose at the time that is centered around the desire of the time. So, for example, a student once has a desire to pass their exams. And so they set that goal and they work toward that. Fine, you see, wonderful. But then once the exam is finished, then they have another desire, maybe to get married and have a house and get a mortgage and all the rest of it. So it is the desire that drives the goal orientation and gives a motivation. And we shouldn't try and persuade anybody otherwise, because it is much better than laziness. And so I don't think we should convert people into this way. I think what we should do is we ourselves should have an outlook which is steady and which engages this central theme of right here, right now. And we leave the person's destiny to their own internal drive, which is there. Because everybody has a natural drive to go home. That's the way I would describe it. There is something that is within us that is full and free and perfect. And if we discover it, the desire will go. Because the desire says, there's some kind of gap in me, I have to fulfill it from the outside and keep filling it because it keeps emptying. And I'll try this one, and then that keeps emptying, so I'll try another one. So it goes on. But nature, well, let's call it Mother Nature, has a way of pricking us nicely and urging us forward. This is called the evolutionary urge. And we can also call it growth. So we have to go through a little pain. There was somebody, I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, probably did. Somebody I met, he's a Lutheran minister, and he had a wonderful definition. He asked me once, he said, what is the difference between religion and spirituality? You go ahead, tell me. He says, well, religion talks about hell, but the spiritual people have gone through it. So we have to go through the hell. There's no doubt. Until we realize, oh, wait, I didn't have to go through, I didn't have to go through that once I understand that consciousness, which is my birthright, need not be moved toward the outside, that I can stand still and appreciate what is here, what is now. As soon as I do that, all future orientation goes and all past why questions go. That means I'm quite content. If I'm content in here and now and absorb myself now in this moment, leave the past where it is. Leave that to the professional psychologists who want to rake that all up. And that's fine. They have to earn a living too, you know. And then the future orientation, we leave that to those go-getters. And fair play to them. Good luck to them. Because they need to fulfill their desires. And that works in two ways. One way is, once a desire is fulfilled, then you look around, what next? And you may get an inspiration. Okay, let me look deeper within. You may get a flash of intuition. Ah, there's a pure being here, now. And that being, in the language of Joel Goldsmith, is here, is now, is love. And if you look to the future, you miss that moment. And so people will cultivate the art of doing that. People who are directed toward that. Otherwise, the other people, don't disturb them, because activity is much better than laziness. Setting goals is much better than sitting still and being a fatalist. So I would say I'm not sure if we have to look for another language, but we can, for ourselves, we can cultivate this idea of learning to be poised in a given moment, and even for a brief second, what I call sit on God's throne from time to time and see things from where he sees them and beam from his golden throne, and you'll see life will look very different. And that can only be done here and now. There's no future orientation in it. There's no past regret in it. The glory is here and now. You see, the example of the snake and the rope was already there. You know, and another person shines a light, and the person still steeped in ignorance. Oh, thank you for saving me from the snake. No, nothing was saved. Whatever was there was there. It was always there. We just didn't notice it. And we didn't notice it because we got captivated in this projection that has a framework of time and space and causal relationships. And that puts us in relationships with other people and places and events and scenes. That's what we call life. But the reactivity of it, if it's not controlled, that becomes pain-bearing and damaging. Because we have to accept whatever comes to us with an element of strength, an element of steadiness. And sometimes when we see a wobble, as we all see it, as we all happens to us, then we assess it. Oh, wobble is there. That's all right. Let me step back and realign myself. And in this realigned moment can only be done in this present moment now. It cannot be in the future or the past. It's as simple as that. So what is the art? The art of spirituality. The art of spirituality is to take advantage of all the tools and equipment around us and learn to reevaluate and convert it into something which is spiritual, something which is its own essence, until the mind becomes so clarified that the truth shines through in a self-evident way by itself. So I think leave those people be. Sorry.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Well, we have 10 minutes more.
Swami, could you say something about desires? Because we're all here on the planet because our mothers and fathers copulated together, and desire is such a basic, like, biological drive. And there's other ones as well, like to to eat, to provide shelter. So, like we're coming in a fragmented way because desire is always there.
Well, there's no life without, yes. Well, there's no life without desire. And it is desire that is the key component to evolutionary growth and progress. And so, Parek's language for desire in a more sophisticated way is setting goals. But you set goals because you have a desire to reach something, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the idea is set the goal, but don't constantly think about it. And the example I always give is, supposing you aspire to climb to the very top of a mountain, let's say Everest, and you train hard for 5 years. In training hard, you have this ideal, this picture in your mind of being at the top, but you can't suddenly arrive there. You have to climb up. And so the best way to do it is to be skilled enough so that you do it in as easy way as possible and you make it enjoyable. And sometimes people enjoy the punishment of it. I don't know. I always remember a friend of mine who went into every single tough marathon they could find. Of course, they wound up with broken knees and all kinds of things, And I said, okay, how do you feel after the first 10 kilometers? Oh, despite my training, I feel as if my lungs are searing. I feel they're going to split apart. I wish I wasn't here. I wish I was dead. I wish I would just drop out and get some water. But what drives you on? When it's finished, the reward is so sweet. I accomplished something, you see. And we can't categorize desire always as bad because we have to have a thorough desire for the good and noble things in life. We have to have a desire that at least there should be some kind of more compassion in the world. We have to have a desire that people become loving. We have to have a desire for God if we are a bhakti, if we're a devotee. We have to have a desire for freedom. But you see, we don't frame it as desire. We frame it as obsession. Have a magnificent obsession about anything and you'll attain what you want. So it is desire that drives the evolutionary process. And it is the evolutionary process that is the avenue to discovery. It is only that at some point in time you realize, oh, wait, is life simply a question of maneuvering all my energy in a quest for something, thinking I'll get somewhere sometime, and not enjoying the journey, and wondering when the rescue would come, and when salvation will come, and when fullness and completion will come in the future. At some stage or other, I might learn the lesson. It doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is whatever I'm looking for is not lost. It's always here, it's always now. It's eternally free. I just have to discover it. Like somebody walking around with their glasses on the top of their head. Has anybody seen my spectacles? No. Have a look in the mirror. Oh, I see, there it is.
But isn't there a transmutation of desire? Because the natural desire is like to procreate and for food. And, when you look at kids growing up and, the ego sort of naturally comes along, it's a natural sort of process. Because you can even see it, them trying to pick flowers out of carpets and things like that. There's a grasping inherent. So, I mean, that has to be like, in order to get to a universalist, let's face it, like lust comes before love in the sense of, of universal, universal orientation.
Yeah, but you see, if you say take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it is a hierarchy. So it starts off with, okay, I need some basic food and shelter, and I need to survive. And the best way that species, all biological species, survive is procreation. But you see, there's still a desire, because procreation is just a replication or a secondary drive of creation. There's an original creative impulse that creates a world. And we decide we want to continue with this. And in continuing this, we take ourselves on a journey that has many valuable lessons. Pain is the most valuable lesson. We learn more from pain than anything else. Yeah. And so as we weave our way on this pilgrimage, we hopefully learn from the pain, unless we're Homer Simpson, who bashes his head against the wall and says, "Do," and does it repeatedly and never learns. And we are sometimes like that. We repeat the same thing and we don't learn from it. So if we learn from it and learn the lesson from it, with the universe being generous enough to give us unlimited opportunities to pass our exams, then we can transmute that desire for whatever it is, for a nobler thing. For example, a desire to appreciate culture, a desire to appreciate art and poetry. And that leads then to a higher desire, a desire to understand and know the universe, or a desire ultimately to know myself. And then a desire that moves on in a practical way to implement the necessary steps toward this self-discovery. So we start off with, a spiritual life starts, if you will, with a yearning. And the yearning acts as a catalyst. It accelerates our so-called progress. It accelerates our realization. The more you yearn for something, the more you develop this one-pointed desire in this direction, the quicker will be the revelation. And you know yourself, anything you ever wanted, anything that was ever fulfilled, you had to have desire, determination, and dedication, these three things. And then the dedication is much more than desire. You can call it a magnificent obsession. And I forget which author it was, one of the 1960s or maybe 70s positive thinking authors, who used this phrase, magnificent obsession. We should all have a magnificent obsession. Now, this ties in with Parth's question, what about goals and goal setting? Yes, if you have a magnificent obsession for a goal, you'll achieve it. We're not saying whether it's going to be good for you or not. We're not saying if it's going to be pain-bearing or not. But when you develop a desire that has love, a universal love in it, you see. And you see, at the human level, we have the capacity to love and express the love in a procreative way. And then that transmutes basic lust and desire at that level, biological lust, into something that is wonderful, that is fulfilling, that is a flower in full bloom. Now you extend that to the whole of humanity. And now you have something going for you, because the whole universe that seems to be all full of individual parts and spaces and fragments is actually only one whole thing. It's a holistic universe. It's not a particular universe. See, even dogs will have love. Even dogs will have a genetic love for their own species or for their own kind. But another dog even comes along and they bite and fright and scratch for territory. And we use that to our advantage by having guard dogs. But you see, man has transcended that. The growth in man means that we have some higher interests. Instead of just rapaciously eating food, nobody can enjoy food like a dog. You see, rapaciously eating, instead of that, we've learned to make some refinement. We cook in a way which is attractive and so on and so forth. We bring some cultural element into it. And then we can elevate that to other aspects of art and culture. That's why man has art galleries. It has nothing to do with survival. It has nothing to do with a struggle. It has nothing to do with competition. Well, some of it might be. So when you elevate the mind to higher and higher dimensions, the mind enjoys the higher things. You get many scientific-minded materialist atheists who say, yes, I really enjoy the elegance, is the language they put, the elegance of mathematical equations. I'm pretty sure an elephant has nothing to do with elegance of mathematical equations. It doesn't even occur to the elephant. The ant is busy doing what it should be doing, having learned biological lessons from previous lives, and knows how to cooperate nicely within its own species. It has learned from experience. Now, if we don't learn from the experience, that's the difficulty. So, transmuting desires into higher desires, and whether you take Jnana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, desire is necessary at the level of I desire to know the truth. I desire to know God. I desire to see God. Or I desire to have the fulfillment of inner wisdom. Well,
Swamiji, Napoleon Hill was the name you were looking for.
Was it Napoleon Hill?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure if it was Napoleon Hill, though. I suspect it was Schuster or somebody like that. But anyway, I take your point. Okay, let's call it Napoleon Hill. Fine. So we've exceeded our time, I think. So thank you. And
Thank you, Swamiji.
if you have any other questions, you can reserve them for Sunday morning.
Thank you, Swami.
All right.
Thank you, Swami.
Okay.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Swami.
Good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Swami.
Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.